Are you good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I like to start with finding out what you guys had as your first foods when you were little, if you know. So if you guys want to go around the room and let me know if you are aware of what your first foods were when you were a baby, I'd love to know. Do you guys want to start on this side? Kaylee, do you know?
I feel like mine was probably a puree of some sort.
Okay.
Something out of a jar that just seems.
Okay.
Yeah. Gosh, I've never thought of
Anybody
that.
else?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure mine was probably just a puree.
Like a jar of baby
Like
food.
food.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody over here? Kind of, sort of around the same thing? Jars of baby food. And you guys are significantly younger than some of us in this room. Who? I was gonna say, my first foods were rice cereal, and I'm one of those kids. I'm 46. Okay, so I'm from the 80s where you put the rice in the bottles. And my mom was taught in the hospital in 1979. I say 80s, baby. 1979. My mom was told that formula was better than breastfeeding. And so that's what she chose. And so we've come a long way, haven't we? You guys are set up for so much more success than we are. But back then, you know, rice cereals, jarred food, there's nothing wrong with a puree of jarred baby food. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But I just was kind of curious where we're at. This conversation has changed in the 10 years that I have done this presentation. This conversation has significantly changed for the better. Because most of the time, 10 years ago, this conversation would have been rice cereal or something from a box or something like that. I love talking to young moms now because you guys are so smart. You ask the best questions, and I can't wait to answer your questions. But I was just kind of curious just to start out where you guys were. So my next question is, if you've had these conversations with your parents or grandparents, what do you think, or what, if you know, what were their first foods as a baby? Think great, probably in some of your cases, maybe great grandparents, if you know. I'm just curious if anybody has an idea.
I have
No idea. That's okay. Anybody?
I would have just said like the people ate. I mean, because there's nothing you can go and buy jarred, you know, food or.
Yeah. So think back far enough that if there weren't stores, what would these parents have been feeding their babies while nursing or when they were done nursing into their toddlerhood? They would have been what was on their table. So today I'm hoping to change your mindset from that super confusing baby aisle full of puffs and jars and boxes and cereals and not knowing what to do to completely simplifying it and having baby eat what your family eats at the table. Because that is going to make for way less stress. It's going to make it way less work on you and way less thought process when you're feeding from the family table. So we're going to talk about what that can look like a little bit. So let's talk about what babies need nutritionally. I'm sure you guys learn in these kind of settings that babies have super tiny tummies. It's why they have to nurse all around them, all the time. I think I saw your 17 Awesome. They need to eat all the time. They have little tiny tummies. So back when I first started doing this, one of the things that I always used to tell myself when the girls were really little, and right now I have a 16, 14, and 12-year-old, so we're talking a long time ago, but when they were really little, I used to think in my head, make every bite count when we were talking about feeding. So when we're talking about these little ones, they have super little bellies. They don't need fillers. We don't need to just be filling them up. We want to be filling them up with things that are actually going to count. So our little babies that are specifically under the age of 1, they don't produce amylase, which is our number one source of carbohydrate breakdown in the stomach. And so that's why a lot of babies that start on rice cereals really struggle. They get constipated, they get fussy, they get gassy, and it's because that super high start is just really hard for their stomachs to break down. There's nothing wrong with rice. It's just when they're that young, it's just really hard to break down. So when we think about what they can break down, think about what is in your breast milk. Your breast milk is mostly fat, and that is what babies have the easiest time to break down. Is anybody here familiar with the work of Dr. Weston Price? Sort of, yes, not really, yes. Okay, he was actually a dentist that actually, what he did was he set out to study ancestral people and people that were tribal people to find out why they were so healthy, find out why, specifically he started wanting to look at their mouths because he was a dentist, why like palates were wide and why, you know, their health was in general better. And he looked a lot at what they ate. And what he found was that traditional peoples, no matter where they were in the world, so it doesn't matter genetically where they were in the world, what they did was, it was all very common. They all fed, they all nursed, and then around 4 to 6 months old, as baby was sitting up, and you've seen them reach, if you've had babies that are 4 to 6 months old, they start reaching for whatever you're eating, and they would feed them whatever it is that they were eating. Now, they weren't eating McDonald's, and they weren't eating, so they were eating what was, you know, there on, you know, on their land. So, I love this question here too. In these tribal communities, they actually found that the babies and the moms were the first to get the most nutrient dense, high nutrient food. So baby wasn't just getting the high nutrient dense food, mom was too, because she was feeding baby, and it matters what mom's eating too. So these people were eating, that they were having tastes. We're talking teaspoons and tablespoons, not cups and bowls. That's what I like to say when we're starting with little ones. Teaspoons and tablespoons, sitting on your lap like this one is sitting on her lap, nice and sat up, and mom is eating and baby's taking a little bite of something that's nutrient dense. So this last point is some of the things that he found. Now, I don't want you to this can feel overwhelming if you're not someone that's like into like homemade things and whatever. Don't get overwhelmed by this. This is the start of a list, but it's the same thing that you could be eating at dinner, your chicken dinner, your whatever it is that you're having for dinner, baby can be eating right along with that as well. So these were some of the nutrient dense foods that Dr. Price found were working for these tribal communities. Fish roe, organ meat, marrow, broth, anything from the animals on their land. So, you know, eggs and milk, and they would, because of how they lived back then, they didn't have refrigeration, they fermented everything to make it last. And so he found that made their guts healthier, it made them sleep better, it made their health overall better. Any questions on that part?
What about like raw cow milk?
Absolutely. Okay, so not before the age of 1, because if baby's nursing, you don't need to do that. But we'll go over when to start that. I have like a chart. But absolutely raw milk, and specifically if it's fermented, you can even give it a little ferment and make it into pepper or something like that. Would be fantastic. So we just talked about this. So in other words, make everybody okay. So when should we start these first foods with baby? It's when you're ready. You know, it's not like a magic formula, and every kid is so bio-individual. I had big time eaters. We started in, but I definitely worked with moms who didn't start until later on, and that's completely fine. It's when you're ready mentally. It's when baby's ready physically. So baby needs to be able to be sitting up and strong sitting up muscles so that they can, you know, obviously swallow and work on that. So Dr. Price did find that traditional people did pre-chew, so think like pulsing in a blender. They did pre-chew things like meat. They pre-chewed like organs and stuff and spooned broths to their babies right around 5-6 months old, and then all the way through as well as breastfeeding. So again, your thought process should be nutrient dense tastes of food, not so teaspoons and tablespoons, not cups and bowls. Okay, so teaspoons and tablespoons, and you're training that process of feeding and their taste palates, and their full meal is obviously still breastfeeding. So you'll start with breastfeeding, and then if you're sitting there, you know, having something that they're allowed to have, they can have a little bite. It makes it less stressful on them. You're not just sticking. Listen. The first time you get them in the high chair and you're like, they can feed off of that stress. Just back off. Sit down with them with a meal. It makes it a lot less stressful on you. Have fun with it. If you like the kind of that Weston Price sort of philosophy, my favorite first food is cod liver oil, and that's what he found these people were doing was, they did fish roe, but cod liver oil is a little easier to get around these parts. And so I started cod liver oil with my girls around 4 months old, just a little bit on a spoon or on the tip of my finger into their mouth. And it's more than just the nutrients that you're getting into them, it's actually training their palates. And those of us that have someone or kids that are a little bit older into their toddler years, that once we get past, I'd say 18 months, and that little word no comes out, and they can say no to everything, it's so much easier to train their palates here than when they're 2 and 3 years old. So training their palates for the tastes of your home is the real deal. I have 3 completely different opposite children. But we did this from very, very little, and they all, even my feistiest one at home, will eat anything that's set in front of her just because we got those tastes of different kinds of foods in front of them from super young, because you get to, their taste palates are blank slates right now. They have no food memories of things being bad or coordinating anything with, a certain food memory to make a certain food taste bad. They have no, I will never forget feeding. I remember wanting to feed my kids fish, and I didn't grow up eating fish. And the smell of fish, the thought of cooking fish absolutely repulsed me. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted to feed Chloe, as my oldest, fish. And so I figured it out. I knew she had to eat it, and I for sure as heck wasn't going to eat it. I grew up on Gordon's fish sticks from a yellow box. And so I remember probably pan frying it because the oven scared me. And I, pan seared it and flaked it up, and she couldn't get enough. She was absolutely hyperventilating in the high chair, freaking out, loved it. Every single one of my kids did that. And I remember just being absolutely shocked, because how could she like this? But I didn't grow up on it. My kids to this day have a better taste palate than I do. And that's why I'm telling you right now, it's just so worth it to give them the little tastes of the things that you want them. And that could be different for everybody. What are the flavors of your home? What are the cuisines of your home? If you love Indian food, if you love Mexican food, if you like spicy food, later on, get them a little bit of spice in there. If that's the kind of stuff that you eat in your home, that's what you can train their palate toward. Okay, I'm gonna be super, super simple as far as preparing baby food. Like I said, I'd love to see you just feeding baby from your plate. Don't complicate it. Unless you've gotten some fancy baby meal from a baby shower and you really, really want to use it, absolutely go ahead and do that. But you can use the back of a fork or a magic bullet just as easily. And I'm all about baby-led weaning. So you can do kind of a mixture of both, because like I said, you want to give them little tastes of food, or at least we have found that tastes of food from young really help shape their taste palate. But you can't just give a kid a piece of beef. pulsing it with a little broth or a little butter or something like that so that they can manage it and then taste it in their mouth is definitely the way to go. So we want to just think super simple, the back of a knife and mashing it. Keep the textures there, don't make it super, super thin and super, super smooth for every single puree, or they're gonna struggle with textures later on. So you can start out pureed so that they can manage it, but start to like lessen that up a little bit. Like I said, your ancestors would have pre-chewed. They didn't have blenders or mills or, magic bullets. They would have pre-chewed and then given them tastes of that. So we already talked about teaspoons and tablespoons, not cups and bowls. As far as the amount, follow baby's lead. It's pretty hard. I mean, you guys know from a breastfeeding standpoint, it's fairly hard to overfeed. When they're done, they're done. They'll give you cues when they're done. It's not gonna feel like a lot to you. It's gonna be like, they had a spoonful or they had a half a spoonful. I can't believe that they're done, but they might be. Remember, they have very tiny tummies. End it when the baby is done. Not when you're done, end it when the baby is done, or you're gonna make for a super stressful situation on them, and then feeding is gonna become something that they're gonna see that high chair and not wanna do it if you're forcing it. And of course, my favorite point, I think that I hope everybody just leaves with is just never underestimate just sharing a plate with baby. Babies are super social eaters. We were meant to eat in community. We were meant to be in community, and so babies eat really well in community. You can teach sitting at the table in manners later. Sit them down, even if it's on the floor. If they do better on the floor, one of my middle one, my middle one ate from a stander at the counter till she was 3, probably. I don't know that she ever sat at the table unless it was like maybe with me for 2 minutes. So if you have a super busy, you can teach manners later. Have them sit down with you, sit down as a family and eat together. It just goes so much easier. It's way less stressful on everybody else. Okay, so here's just a very simple timeline, super simple. So 4 to 6 months, we talked about starting with cod liver oil. I've got brands, if you guys want stuff you can pick up right here or online order. If you want it, you're gonna hate it. You're gonna be like, this is disgusting. I don't wanna even try it. If you can try it, it actually would be really, really good for you to take too while you're breastfeeding. It is nature's most perfect source of the ratio of vitamin A and vitamin D. So if you wanna talk about immune systems, right there is your very first best way to keep your immune system really, really in a very natural way in tip-top shape during the season when we're all spreading germs. So cod liver oil is a great start. Weston Price found that they actually would soft cook egg yolks, not the whites. The whites are a little bit hard on baby's digestion. It's really high in protein. So they tend to say to stay away from egg whites till 1. I want to say by the time I had my 3rd baby, she was having scrambled eggs by 9 months. I mean, let's just be honest. Unless there's an egg allergy in the family, wait until 1 on the egg whites. If I were to be talking to you one-on-one right now and you had no egg allergies in the family, I'd say probably 9 months is probably okay for a full egg. But they actually took the egg yolks and would serve it with liver, whatever the animals were that were on their land. That was what they served it with because it is the most nutrient dense, high vitamin, high mineral. It's just a more bang for your buck. It's just the highest potency of nutrients. So when my kids were little, their very first foods were a taste of cod liver oil off the tip of my finger or off the tip of a spoon. And then I would soft boil or soft cook an egg yolk. And I would keep liver in the freezer. And then I would just grate it over the egg yolk. It sounds absolutely disgusting. I know. I'm so sorry. It sounds awful. They absolutely gobbled it up. So if you're not familiar with using organ meat, it sounds super odd. I know I'm getting so many faces right now. Okay, it is the most bang for your buck from a nutrient dense standpoint. So the vitamins, the iron, if you're having iron issues, there right there is your answer.
I feel like grating the liver is so much more approachable.
Oh, yes.
Cooking it. Like,
Oh, yes.
You know, Charlie did it for me
Yes.
after I was pregnant. Because it was good for me.
Yes.
But that sounds like too daunting.
Right.
But I love getting the just
Right.
grating it.
My baby's very favorite, and they still eat it to this day. I don't. I remember one time packing it in the kindergarten lunchbox and then thinking that probably wasn't really smart. There's a great liver pate recipe in my cookbook that babies just devour, and it is a great way for mom to like get some crackers and try. It's a great way for you to get liver in. Nowadays, they have liver capsules. You can get organ meat. You can get multi-organ meat capsules now, which is incredible. This is what I actually sprinkle in. I will use a multi-organ meat powder and sprinkle it into anything ground beef, spaghetti, tacos, meatballs, whatever. And it's just a really approachable, sustainable way if you're not getting like a grass-fed cow or chicken livers or whatever from your farmer. It's just a really easy way. You can find that kind of stuff anywhere now. Okay. They would have taken the bones from their whatever animals that were on their land, and they would have served the marrow. We had a beef roast this past weekend, and my children, my teenagers, were fighting over the bone. There was only one bone. I didn't put two roasts in there. There was one bone, and they fought over. We had to divide the marrow. That is what I'm talking about creating taste palettes. You can have these teenagers, and I'm telling you what, my teenagers are busy. I've got a gymnast and two runners that are constantly in athletics, and it is so much easier to feed an athlete or feed these busy kids when they can eat like this and they notice a difference. They recover faster. They can eat better, and so they can perform better. It just makes a huge difference. Okay, they can also have mashed banana, and I know we talked about how amylase is something that babies struggle with because they don't make enough when they're one, but bananas, papaya, and avocado all have amylase built right in, so you can do banana, and that will be fine with them. They won't get fussy, they won't get gassy because it has the amylase right in there. 6 to 8 months old is when you can kind of start putting in pretty much everything other than grains and beans and nuts. You can do pulsed or pureed cooked meat, organ meat, whatever your family eats. This was right around the time when I started doing like a whole chicken. I would make just throw a whole chicken in my slow cooker, because back then we didn't have Instant Pot. But you can throw it in an Instant Pot too if you have an Instant Pot at home. You can make a whole chicken, and then that meat stock that's left in the slow cooker or in that Instant Pot is something that you can puree the meat in, or you can pulse the meat in. You can do fermented dairy from 6 to 8 months old. It's really great for their guts. It really helps them to build their bacteria. They actually get your bacteria during birth, and so you want to help maintain that flora, and so fermented dairy is a great way of doing that. They can have fats. Of course, we talked about how your breast milk is mostly fat, and so butter, coconut butter, olive oil. Olive oil can be a little bit, stick with animal fats are a little bit easier because your breast milk is animal fat, but you can do animal fats, tallow, lard. You can pulse any of their food in with a little bit of fat, just a little bit. We're not talking about tons of it, just a little scoop or a little pat on there. They can have a little bit of cooked vegetables as long as you put it with some fat. So you'll find in my cookbook any of the recipes in the front half of the book, it's kind of how to introduce baby to individual foods. And all of those vegetables are going to be pureed with a fat. And the reason why is because vegetables have fat-soluble vitamins. They need fat in order to absorb. And so not only does it make it taste better, it helps the vitamins in the vegetables absorb. It's okay, and so you can also do ferments. Like if you like to do ferments, or if you like Bubby's pickles or whatever, you can give them that brine off a spoon, and that will help maintain their gut flora as well. The only raw fruits that they can still have at this point are still banana, avocado, mango, papaya, those ones that actually have the amylase built right in to help them digest it. Otherwise, if you want to do some other fruits like apples or berries or something like that, you just got to make sure that you cook it. It just helps it digest better, and you can serve it with some fat. So there are some recipes for that as well in there. This was just personal preference. That's completely on you. I personally did very limited fruits right up on the front end of things. Number one, because they didn't eat very much to begin with. And so they didn't know any better whether or not they were getting meat or apples or whatever. So I would rather like nutrient dense front load them. And then if, we would do maybe fruits like once a day or every other day or something like that. Again, you're kind of building their taste palette. So if they're getting something super, super sweet every single day, every single meal, that's what they're going to come to expect. And that's where you kind of, it can be tricky with the purees at the store, because a lot of them, if you turn them around and look at the ingredients, they front load it with apple. It might be like a veggie puree, but they front load it with apple or even carrot sometimes. Carrots are great, but because it's sweet. But and carrots can be tricky, because if we do too much of them, their little noses are going to turn orange. So you just got to be real careful with that. That was personal preference. If you want to do it differently, there's nothing wrong with giving babies cooked fruits. I just found that it worked really well with my kids. 8 to 12 months, you can, and I say on here, this is more like looking like dinners and things like this. But at 6 to 8 months, when they're sitting up, and they're able to sit up, like I see an older baby here that probably would sit on laps at dinners and here. You can give them tastes of things that they can actually have. If you're having, I'm trying to think of something, like you're having mashed potatoes. You're sitting, or mashed sweet potatoes at dinner time. This is gonna probably make you think twice about what you're making for dinner, but in a good way. So make something for dinner that they can have a little bite of too. 8 to 12 months, they can start. This is when I did a ton of soups. My kids will eat soup every day of the week. I think it's a great way of getting in nutrients. It's a great way of getting vegetables into kids who maybe are veggie hesitant. And again, if you start it, around 6 months old, it's just something that they know. They've never known any different. And my 16-year-old brought butternut squash soup to school today. That was her choice. I don't pack lunches anymore. So they can have simple tastes of family dinner that don't have grains, beans, nuts at this point. It could just be a lot on their system. And again, they have tiny tummies. They're not going to take in a whole lot. They can have shredded fermented vegetables. So in that 6 to 8 months, we were giving them just the brine. In the 8 to 12 months, I used to shred up carrots. Nowadays, you can find them at the store. I mean, it's so easy to find shredded fermented vegetables at the store. But I would shred carrot, I would shred cabbage, I would shred whatever I could and stick it in a jar and ferment it. And those little tiny shredded vegetables are really easy for baby to manage. At 8 to 12 months, they can also do raw cheeses and cottage cheese instead of just fermented dairy. And then once they get to that 1 year mark, the sky's the limit. Whatever is at your table at home is what you want baby to be eating and getting used to. Any questions on the chart? I can get this chart to you, Kylie.
Yeah, I took a picture of that. I'll post it. That's
Yeah.
great.
This is sort of like very, very broad in general. The cookbook actually goes a shorter time span and kind of like helps a little bit more like detailed. Yes.
How dangerous is it to like veer off of this? Like we eat a lot of beans at home, so I
Absolutely.
I eat her beans.
Absolutely. If she's fine with it, like I said with the eggs, if there's egg allergies, we don't want to do eggs until they're 1. If she's doing fine on beans, if she's pooping, if she's like happy, if she's not super gassy, it sounds like she's fine. I would personally recommend them maybe be soaked or sprouted just to help with digestion in general, because that just helps with the phytic acid, but that's what I would do.
And then
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
with that, like, what do you mean by like fermenting your food?
Sure,
I'm not
sure. I'm so glad you asked that. So from a fermented dairy standpoint, we're talking about kefir, yogurt, sour cream, anything that's fermented. If you get, someone said they got raw dairy. Do you get someone got raw dairy, raw milk, someone? Oh, okay, so if you get your own milk and want to ferment it, you can get like kefir grains online super easy, but you can also get fermented dairy at like Harvest Health nowadays.
People would eat sauerkraut.
Oh, yeah, so then I was gonna go into vegetables. So sauerkraut would be something that, you can find that at the store. And Meyer has Bubby's, right in the pickles section of the refrigerated section, they have Bubby's pickles and sauerkraut. So the brine in there, and now I'm not talking about pickles on the pantry aisle shelves that are in like vinegar, not that kind of a ferment. I'm talking about water and salt to ferment a vegetable. So there's some recipes for fermented vegetables on my blog that if you want to make your own vegetables, it's literally shred vegetables, put in jar, salt and water, and that's it. And you let it ferment on so the natural bacteria in that vegetable will ferment the vegetable and make it. That's how people used to preserve their food. So they would ferment it so it didn't have to be refrigerated. Okay, so they can have from a vegetable standpoint, they can have like the brine, the little liquid that's in that pickle brine. They can have that like between the ages of 6 to 8 months, and then they can have the actual vegetable closer to a year. So you can find, Harvest Health has a ton of them. Meyer has some. I would even say probably Target probably these days has like Bubby's, but there's a lot of brands out there now. You don't necessarily have to make it if you don't want to. Okay. Yes.
If you want to introduce nuts like sooner than a year, to avoid allergies.
Yes.
What's a good way to introduce that?
So
I know like peanut butter can be dangerous for children.
Yeah. So this is a really good question, and this is something that is fairly recent in the last maybe 6 to 7 years. I actually did the same thing with my third born, because when my firstborn, it was like, you don't give peanut butter, like it was like, you don't do any of that. Nowadays there is some research coming out saying that if you expose baby to some of these allergens early on, it does help with prevention of the allergies. You can kind of look into that research if you want. If you don't have peanut allergies or nut allergies in your family, doing nuts beforehand is completely fine. What I would do is I would put a little bit of peanut butter or a little bit of nut butter in a baby smoothie. I would put it in a baby smoothie or in a little bowl of yogurt, so it's kind of mixed in and not as sticky. I'm trying to think of some other ways. You can just kind of mixing it in. I wouldn't do just peanut butter off a spoon here. It's just a little bit tough for them to manage with their mouth. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what do we look for when we're feeding our baby? My biggest recommendation is just to don't get frustrated if they're going like this. And if they're making faces, and if they're refusing it, because it really can take up to 15 attempts, and this is your toddlers too with new food. It can take up to 15 attempts for them to accept a new food. So just keep trying and don't make a big deal out of it, because if we make it a negative situation at the high chair every time and you get frustrated, they're absolutely going to feed off of that and get frustrated every time you put them in the high chair. So just, if they're refusing it after a couple of tries, just back off and try it again in a couple more days or another week. And again, we're just going for taste of food, not full-on meals. Baby is still breastfeeding or nursing or they're taking a bottle or whatever. And before the age of 1, it's just tastes of food. If baby is extra fussy, gassy, or projectile vomiting, has redness anywhere in their mouth, anywhere in their tummy, like it's giving you systemic sort of things, we want to back off on that food for a little bit. It just might be that they're not ready for it at the moment. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're allergic to it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're never going to be able to eat it. It just means that at the moment their digestion isn't ready for it. You can try it again in a couple months. You can try it again in a year. If there are allergies in your family, those kind of foods you might want to just be careful until they're around a year, just to be sure. If you notice that baby's nose gets a little bit yellow or orange, don't freak out about it. It's just that their little livers can't process it. Maybe they're taking in too much of the orange foods. So just back off on that. I used to do orange foods like every other day, just to be sure. I did have I think it was my firstborn. I remember seeing the orange nose and absolutely freaking out, but it's okay. It goes away in a little while. It just means that their liver got too much of the orange foods. Any questions on that?
I never knew that. That's why they're
The orange.
Yeah, orange.
Yeah.
I just thought it was stained from.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So that's really good to know.
Yeah, the vitamin A can't convert. It's a different conversion. Their livers aren't ready for it yet. So I am kind of wrapped up at this point, but I just wanted to remind you just to have fun with it. I know it's super cliche to say like it goes by fast, but if you create these really positive food memories with your kids, it makes such a huge difference. And I actually got chills just talking about it, because having teenagers that love food and will eat anything that's set in front of it, it makes it all so worth it. So enjoy it. I did want to show this little trick here. This is actually meat stock in a little, see the mire? It's a syringe, like a little medicine syringe. So if you want, she was one that she hated spoons. She I tried every spoon in the world. I would let her just use her hands mostly, but I wanted to do meat stock with her, and she wouldn't take it in she was like boob only, would not do a bottle, would not do a sippy cup, would not do any sort of cup. And so I used a syringe to help her get meat stock in this little trick. But anyway, so
I was just gonna ask for tips on a baby that will not let him.
things, so won't let no spoons, no whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't tried a spoon, but yeah, he was super close for a little bit, and then no bottle on a pacifier, no don't.
Oh, yeah.
try to put something in.
Actually, most of these pictures are my only boob baby,
Okay.
and
Mine's little.
she was a big eater. She loved eating. I mean, she loved the boob too. Most of these pictures, she's under the age of 1, and this was after nursing her, and then she would sit down, and this is dinner. I mean, this is squash, and it looks like cabbage. That's ground beef, and I would just pick it apart really small. So yeah.
So 2 things I want to add.
Yes.
One thing is my kids go to school with Renee's kids, and I will say that she is not lying. Her kids will eat anything. It's beautiful. If it brings salmon in their lunch, it's just this actually does work. So if anyone's a little skeptical, it's legit, right? I'm gonna get it right this time.
The time in the kitchen is worth it, but you also don't have to be in the kitchen all day. I'm talking about seriously, she said salmon. The girls are, I pulled the salmon out of the freezer for dinner tonight, and my kids were absolutely just very teenager moody today, and we're just mad that there wasn't enough, that I wasn't going to be making enough for lunch boxes tomorrow. Go get a job. But it doesn't have to be big fancy dinner casseroles every night. It's literally a piece of chicken and rice and vegetables, or mashed potatoes, mashed squash. My kids love squash. Take advantage of the seasons. It can be very budget friendly. It doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be big elaborate dinners every night. Okay, questions? I'm just going to leave this up here. That way you guys can have some of these resources if you need them. Yes?
So I noticed you mentioned meat stock and not bone broth. So
Yes.
is that just boiling the meats with bones?
Yes. It is less histamine. It's a little easier on their gut. They can have bone broth. I did both with my kids, but we didn't have gut issues. So if baby has some gut issues, or you're suspecting gut issues, I would stick with meat stock. It is so meat stock would be, you're taking a whole chicken, or you're taking a piece of beef, and you're putting it in your slow cooker or a roaster or your Instant Pot with a little bit of water and vegetables and cooking it. The leftover juices in that, that's called meat stock, and that it's just slow, it's lower cooked, so it's lower histamine. It has lots of collagen, tons of collagen, and it has all the nutrients that are coming from the meat. Bone broth would be straining that meat stock off, taking all the bones off of the chicken, putting them back in your pot, and doing like a 24-hour cook to make a bone broth. Bone broth is also rich in collagen and nutrients, and it's really good, but it's a longer cook, so it's higher in histamines and can be a little bit hard on baby's belly if baby has gut things going on. If baby doesn't have gut things going on, all of my babies had bone broth and meat stock because I would do both. I would cook my chicken, I would use all the juices from that, and then I'd throw the bones back in and make the bone broth, and we would use that too. Good question. Yeah.
So 2 quick questions. One on that, how bad is like if I go to Meijer and get like a bottle or like a carton of like low sodium beef broth?
I am so glad you brought that up because I actually forget, because you really can get bone broth on the shelves now, and it's great. Kettle and Fire is a great brand. Actually, I like the Costco brand. Okay? Just check the ingredients. There's one. I want to say it is the Meijer brand bone broth. It has a really sketchy, like natural flavors ingredient that I'm like, come on, just put the bones in there. Like, why do we need that in there? Because that can be a really, really broad ingredient. It can be lots of things. So just check the ingredients. I like Kettle and Fire. The one at Costco is fine. If you have certain brands of bone broth that you see at the store that you are curious about, I'm happy to look at it and look at the ingredients and help you figure it. What's that? Zoot? I've never heard of it. So just
It's like they're
like a bone broth.
well,
I'll check it out.
Yeah, they're a soup restaurant that
Oh,
makes
perfect.
their stuff is sold at.
Awesome. I'm sure.
It seems cleaner.
I'm sure it's clean. Just look at the ingredients. I'm just not a huge fan of specifically for babies that ingredient, that really like broad term of natural flavorings can be kind of sketchy.
I have a second question.
Yes.
I am not a very adventurous eater myself.
Okay.
And so like the idea of like, oh, just do variety of foods like that overwhelms me.
Sure.
Like I go into the aisle at Meijer and I pick out my 5 ingredients from this aisle.
Sure.
So like I guess what's a good strategy to like even just not be overwhelmed by the number of foods I could try?
I love that question. Man, I told you they're smart. Young moms are smart because you know you want it better for.
Well, this
What's
is
the
hers.
name? Oh, okay. I'm not like there's so many babies over here. You all have twins. There's so many of them. You want it that? Oh yeah, you're across. Yours is
Yeah,
across
mine's
the
18.
hall.
Mine's 18.
Okay.
She's
She.
a little faster.
What's her name?
Lucia.
Alucia. Okay, so you probably, I'm assuming because you're asking this question, you're wanting her to probably be a more adventurous eater
Yes, because
than
I'm not.
mom. Okay, so I hear you. I grew up on the standard American diet.
Mhm.
I grew up on boxed everything. We had family dinners, but we didn't necessarily go out to eat all the time. But I was a horrible eater. And it took me actually getting sick in my very early 20s to realize that I actually okay, I gotta figure this out. And I had to train my own palate. But when I had Chloe, I knew I wanted it to be different for her. I didn't want her to have to struggle to try and figure out how to eat like I did. And so sometimes she ate stuff that I didn't. Like I was talking about that fish, it took me probably till my 3rd kid to actually enjoy fish.
Yeah.
I would just get a small amount of it and make it for her. You know, I just knew I wanted it better. I wanted her to have a better palate than I did. And so sometimes that means maybe you're making a plate for yourself and you're trying a couple bites, but baby's eating most of it. Make smaller portions. I don't think I put it on here. Nope. There's a link on my blog with 5 tips for creating adventurous eaters. And I love the tips on there. They're very approachable. But some of those things are just you just allowing him to, or her. Sorry, I'm looking at the baby. Allowing her to have those tastes and getting little things, but don't overwhelm yourself with getting it all at once.
Okay.
Just pick something that you want to start with.
Yeah.
and go from there.
I've been working on my courage for shrimp. Don't like shrimp.
You don't like shrimp. I don't like shrimp. My kids love shrimp. It's awful. I cannot even do it. My kids will go to a restaurant, and that's what they'll order is like seafood, and it blows me away every single time. Yeah, and it's okay. I think doing it that way, it's like just accepting the fact that maybe I'm not gonna change everything about myself, but I can make it better for my kid. It helps. What kind of things do you guys do for dinner at home? Like, what are your 5 things? You said you get like 5 things. Like,
I'm
what
working on that. Beans and rice is this week, and
Yeah.
I'm doing something like a spaghetti squash
Sure.
chicken thing.
Perfect. All of that. That's great.
So,
All of that. I mean, those are all things that she can have.
okay.
Absolutely. And then, maybe you step out and maybe you start making a soup that she can have. Like, you could make a soup that maybe you're not going to necessarily love, but she can have it all week long, and you don't even have to think about her lunch all week.
Yeah.
And you can freeze it or whatever.
I'll try that.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? I'll just leave this up here, and we can kind of like,
Yeah.
if you want to stop that, you can. Yeah.
Friend that's not able to
Oh
be
yeah,
here.
oh yeah.
Yes, I
We'll
wanna-
keep this going. Yeah, you had some
Yeah.
questions from people who didn't want to be here.
Fertility, like trying to have a second baby,
Sure.
wondering what best nutrition for her body would be at this point to
Sure.
try and conceive.
That's a great question.
Yeah, so
And so all of those things that we talked about at the beginning, where those traditional peoples, they prioritized the women. The women in their childbearing years and the babies got first dibs on all of the organ meat. They got first dibs on all of the super nutrient dense foods. So anything from organ meat, eggs, raw dairy, the meat stocks, the bone broths, fat. So our hormones are absolutely reliant on fat, specifically animal fats, but fat in general. If we want hormones to be working and balanced and doing what they need to be doing, there needs to be fat. I'm not talking about eating gobs of it. I'm talking about, tablespoons at each meal, teaspoons and tablespoons at each meal. Yeah. It's not the time to low carb it. It's not the time to go carnivore. It's not the time to be low calorie. If I could go back and do anything differently, I wouldn't worry about watching calories and I'm from that era, it's like, it's just not, we grew up in the 80s, right? Like low fat, it's not the time for that. You guys, like I said, you guys are this young moms, they're so smart. I love it.
So we have, I have 2 of Renee's books up here, just the Nourish Beginnings, and I'm telling you right now, like her recipes are legit. Like my kids can eat tons of veggie pack. Like when I have a baby, Renee will bring me food, and like she brought me this broccoli soup, and I'm like, oh, that's neat. My kids are not gonna touch it.
That's neat.
They scrape like roll, right?
That's neat.
Like, it's like how she has perfected these recipes that is so approachable for kids, and they actually really like it. So I can't recommend it.
I did bring some with me, and I have a Venmo and a Square if anybody needs to, but you can find it online too.
Yeah.
Do you have a preferred place to purchase your books?
I can do it right here. Yeah, or if you would prefer to Amazon it, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah, no problem.
So Colleen and I are here if you guys have recipe questions. Otherwise, we have